The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine that started on 24th February 2022 has significant implications for the global economy, while the direct economic impact of the war is primarily felt in the region. The war may have broader consequences on the world economy if it escalates or if there is a major disruption in the global economic market. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, all present here. I'm Aditya Pratap Singh, speaker for today. I am pursuing my bachelor's degree in English and Computer Application at Shyam Lal College Eve, University of Delhi. On the onset, I would like to thank the guest of honor, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Sir, Associate Professor, Department of Economics, Atmaram Sanatan Dharma College, University of Delhi, for his kind presence, Dr. Manish Karmwar Sir, and the hardworking and resourceful team of GSTS for providing me this opportunity to present my views and research on the topic global economic recession. So, the first question that arises in our first of all, like my objectives for the talk will be economic recession, an overview, then Russo-Ukrainian War, a prequel to upcoming recession, followed by effects of recession on education, effects on job and employment, plight of the poor, never-ending cries of the downtrodden and toddlers, India's stability, financially able or vulnerable, precaution, how can we avoid a possible recession? With this, I will now proceed with my presentation. First question that arises in our brain is what is recession? So, recession is basically a period of economic decline characterized by reductions in economic output, increase in unemployment, and decreased consumer spending. Between 1929 and 1932, also known by the name Great Depression, worldwide gross domestic product, that is the GDP, fell by an estimated 15%. By comparison, worldwide GDP fell by less than 1% from 2008 to 2009 during the Great Recession. Some economies started to recover by the mid 1930s. However, in many countries, the negative effects of the Great Depression lasted until the beginning of World War II. Devastating effects were seen in both rich and poor countries, with falling personal income, prices, tax revenues, and profits. International trade fell by more than 50%. Unemployment in the US rose to 23%, and in some countries rose as high as 33%. Cities around the world were hit hard, especially those dependent on heavy industry. Construction was virtually halted in many countries. Farming communities and rural areas suffered as crop prices fell by about 60%. Faced with plummeting demand and few job alternatives, areas dependent on primary sector industries suffered the most. Economic historians usually consider this the catalyst of the Great Depression to be the sudden devastating collapse of the US stock market prices starting on October 24th, 1929. However, some dispute this conclusion, seeing the stock crash less as a cause of the depression and more as a symptom of the rising nervousness of the investors, partly due to gradual price declines caused by falling sales of consumer goods that had already been underway as a part of gradual depression. One of the primary concerns One of the primary concerns is the potential impact the Russo-Ukrainian war has on the energy prices. Russia is a major supplier of natural gas to Europe, and any disruption in the supply of gas could lead to higher prices and shortages. Additionally, if the conflict were to escalate and lead to a disruption in oil prices in the Middle East, global prices could rise even further. In addition to energy prices, the conflict could also impact global trade. If the situations get any worse, it could lead to economic sanctions and trade restrictions, which could have a significant impact on global supply chains and trade patterns. Hence, the ongoing war could also contribute to a global economic recession. The world is already suffering with a decline in consumer and investor confidence, which could lead to a contraction in the global economic activity. Additionally, any significant disruption in the global energy market could also contribute to a global economic downturn. It is important to note, however, that the impact of the Russia Ukraine war on the global economy is difficult to predict with certainty. The situation is fluid, and the economic impact will depend on a variety of factors, including the duration and intensity of the conflict and the response of the global markets and policymakers. The world's biggest economy, the US, is technically in recession, with factories dialing back production and job cuts increasing. In a desperate bid to prevent in a desperate bid to prevent a long recession expected by the end of this year, the UK 5 months ago went in for the sharpest interest rate hike in a quarter of a century, while Germany is seeing the biggest drop in consumer spending since 1980. The United Nations, in a report on October 3rd, warned that monetary and fiscal policy moves in advanced economies risk pushing the world towards global recession and prolonged stagnation, and that it could inflict worse damage than the financial crisis in 2008 and the COVID shock in 2020. The energy crisis in Europe could have a domino effect this March, making recession inevitable. The World Bank, in fact, as much as that all of the policy tweaking by the governments may not stop a recession from hitting the world economy soon. न चौर्हार्यम न च राजहार्यम न भ्रातृभाज्यम न च भारकारी व्यये कृते वर्धते एव नित्य विद्याधनम सर्वधन प्रधानम. This is a famous shloka from Shubhasitani. It means education is the best wealth. No one can steal it. No state can snatch it. It cannot be divided among brothers, and it's not heavy to carry. As one consumes or spends, it increases. As one shares, it expands. With this, I would like to jump to my next topic, that is the effects of recession on education. Global economic recession has had significant effects on education, including decreased funding for education. Recently, the governments around the world reduced their spending on education, leading to budget cuts for schools, colleges, and universities. Many students that left home to study in the US or UK suffered a lot due to this. Reduced access to education. Families are struggling to afford the costs of education, leading to decreased enrollment rates and increased dropout rates. Some Indian students, for example, that left their homeland to pursue their degrees in foreign lands, are when the Indian rupee was at 74 against the dollar, are having sleepless nights now that the prices have shot up due to the countries approaching a state of recession. The cost of almost everything from students' accommodation to insurance and food has gone over the top. Number three, reduced job opportunities for graduates. In the past few months, there have been fewer job opportunities available, making it harder for recent graduates to find work in their chosen field. Number four, changes in education priorities. During a recession, there may be a shift in priorities towards practical or vocational education that is more closely aligned with the job market. Effects of recession on jobs. In the previous global economic recessions that the world has suffered, it was seen that recessions typically led to a reduction in employment due to decreased demand for goods and services, decreased investment, and lower productivity. This results in job losses, reduced working hours, and slower job growth. The severity and duration of the recession, as well as the policies and measures taken by the governments and businesses, have a significant impact on the extent of employment effects. Effects on underprivileged class. Global economic recessions can have a significant impact on the downtrodden and underprivileged class in the coming days. These individuals have very few financial resources, making them more vulnerable to economic shocks such as job losses, reduced income, and increased poverty. During a recession, job opportunities may become scarce, causing higher unemployment rates, which can be particularly devastating for those in low wage jobs. The cost of basic necessities such as food, housing, and healthcare may also rise, making it harder for the underprivileged to make their ends meet. Furthermore, government support and social safety nets may also be affected by a recession, reducing the amount of aid available to these vulnerable classes. As a result, the overall well being of the underprivileged may be severely impacted with higher rates of hunger, homelessness, and health problems. World Economic Outlook update of January 2023. As you can see, the overview of growth projects in various regions around the world. In 2023, global growth rate slowed down to 1.7% from 3% expected 6 months ago. Global growth rate is slowing sharply in the face of elevated inflation, higher interest rates, reduced investments, and disruptions caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to the World Bank's latest Global Economic Prospects report, the US S&P, that is Standard and Poor's 500, is still expected to end 2023 a little higher than it began the year. The average target of 22 strategists polled by Bloomberg has the S&P 500 ending 2023 at 478 points, about 6% higher than it ended 2022. The Bank of England is expected to raise UK interest rates again in the coming months, with the bank rate hitting 4.5% in the summer from its current 3.5%. Given fragile economic conditions, any new adverse development, such as higher than expected inflation, abrupt rises in interest rates to contain it, a resurgence of the COVID 19 pandemic, or escalating geopolitical tensions, could push the global economy into a state of recession. This would mark the first time in more than 80 years that two global recessions have occurred in the same decade. Women around the world are being disproportionately affected by the cost of living crisis. according to UN research. It says women are the shock absorbers of poverty, noting that their position as primary care providers in many countries means they are often less able than men to increase their hours of paid work. The global economy is projected to grow by 1.7% in 2023 and 2.7% in 2024. The sharp downturn in growth is expected to be widespread, with forecasts in 2023 revised down for 95% of advanced economies and nearly 70% of emerging market and developing economies. In the United States, growth is forecast to fall to 0.5% in 2023, 1.9 percentage points below previous forecasts and weakest performance outside of official recessions since 1970. In 2023, euro area growth is expected at 0%, which is a downward revision of 1.9 percentage points. Now, moving up ahead, the next topic is how will India get affected? As of now, India's growth is pretty intact, but there is something that may still trip it up: the lack of jobs. The organized sector can spend for productive employment, whereas the requirement of job market is much larger. A large part of it was catered by the unorganized sector and MSMEs, which are currently not in a position to provide that right now. Consistent blows to the unorganized sector, from demonetization to GST to COVID lockdown, have affected creation of jobs in the informal economy. According to the data by the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, manufacturing jobs went down from 5 crore to 3 crore in the past 6 years. Private sector employment propped up the consumer economy since the liberalization of the economy in the 1990s. But that is shrinking, and young job seekers are now desperately seeking government jobs. Reconfiguring of the safety nets inherent in the public sector, as recently seen in the reaction to Agniveer scheme, has led to violent protests. Mahindra Group chairman Anand Mahindra said in August at the company's general body meeting, with one of the largest youthful populations in the world, it is easy to imagine the potential for social unrest if jobs do not grow along with youthful population. India became the fastest growing major economy in the world in 2021, but things can go awry for India if a global recession hits hard. Already, the price rise of everything from petrol to edible oils has been among the sharpest in a decade. Retail inflation percentage remains above 7 and has been above 6, the upper limit of tolerance set by the Reserve Bank of India. The wholesale price index has been hovering around 14% since December 2021. High inflation is eroding real income, triggering a global cost of living crisis that has pushed millions into poverty and economic hardships. Now, exports, which hit an all-time high of 422 billion in the 2021 fiscal year, now seems to slow down. India is planning to make one of its biggest ever boosts to capital spending in its 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, as it looks to create jobs. India aims at boosting the overall spending by 33% for the year from April 1st, taking it to about a dollar 122.3 billion mark. following rise of 37% in 2020 to 2021 and 2021 to 2022. The move comes after India's finance ministry said it sees GDP growth slowing slightly for the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year because the global economic slowdown will impact its exports. It expects growth of 6.0 to 6.8%, down from projected 7% growth for its current fiscal year. What the Russian intervention in global peace did was to aggravate an already post COVID recovery. Economies needed stimuli, but with abrupt rise in the prices, governments had no option but to quickly taper the risks by increasing the interest rates. The number of total unicorns startups with a valuation of $1 billion in India has dropped sharply in the last few months. The ray of hope amid all this commotion is the fervent optimism that India may just be better equipped to withstand the global tailwinds than most other countries. The Indian government's best case scenario will be keeping fuel prices and job losses under check and hoping that the increase in the repo rate, that is, the rate of borrowing by banks set by the RBI, which impacts loan interest rates, have a positive effect. Interest rates have already been hiked above pre-COVID levels. The rest will be up to the industry to expand capacity and domestic demand. The new economy could also help. The growth in startup solutions, digital technology, renewable energy, and environmental solutions could provide a buffer. Wealth creation is going to happen in the new ecosystem of the new age companies in the coming decade, said Sashank Randev, the co founder of the venture capital firm 100x.vc. The consensus is that while global recession will impact India for sure, there is unlikely to be a recession in India. The worry would be slowing growth. Lastly, I would like to conclude my talk with a few suggestions on how the Indian government could tackle these tough times. It is highly unlikely for India to trip over into a state of recession, but we should keep our guard up. Here are some of my suggestions. Number one, generating new job opportunities to harness the youth power and channeling their strength into something productive. Number two, providing taxation and revenue collection systems. Number three, investing in human resource, educating and training the unskilled, hence, turning the possible liabilities into boosters of the economy. And lastly, providing relaxation to startups and devising a more efficient system for the collection of taxes from the unorganized sector. That's all for today's talk. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aditya. You gave a wonderful talk. That was wonderful. And it was indeed a very informative session, and I'm very sure audience must have released your session. And now it's a time. It's a time for question and answer round session. In this, Mr. Aditya, you have to answer the questions that are given in chat box by our inquisitive listeners. So let's get started. First question is from Mr. Raj. He's asking that when prices get high, the downtrodden and underprivileged are the most affected. So can you put more highlight on this? That how did they get affected?
First of all, in case of a recession, we generally see a price hike, which ultimately affects the middle class, the lower middle class, and especially the underprivileged and downtrodden. It is because they already have less revenue and uh, financial support. and over that, if they see a price hike, they are unable to cope up and are not able to make their ends meet.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Mr. Salman. He's asking that what is the role of IMF, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and National Reserve Banks over controlling the depression and recession by means of relief packages, tax relief, and extending loan installment time?
Okay. Uh, the IMF and others that you have mentioned, when they provide relief funds, they are also trying to taper the risks of collapsing of economies.
Hmm.
So they like obviously they the increase in interest rates that we saw in the past few uh, months, it is the ultimate effect of the recession happening all around the world.
Okay, thank you. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज फ्रॉम मिस्टर पुनीत ही इज आस्किंग दैट क्या भारत के लोगों की बचत करने की परंपरा के कारण आर्थिक मंदी का प्रभाव कम रहा? मैं इंग्लिश में समझाऊं या you
जी
got it?
नहीं नहीं अ, जाहिर सी बात है कि हमारी हमारी भारतीय संस्कृति में जो हमें परिवार में आवाज एक्चुअली रिपीट होके आ रही है इसमें।
Okay.
Probably mute yourself.
जी, तो जैसे कि मैं कह रहा था कि हमारे परिवारों में जो हमें सिखाया जाता है, खास तौर पे जो माध्यमिक माध्यमिक क्षेत्र के जो परिवार हैं, उनमें हमें सिखाया जाता है कि कैसे अपने कम कम खर्चे में कैसे ज़्यादा हम लोग अपनी ज़रूरतें पूरी कर सकते हैं। और ज़ाहिर-सी बात है कि कहीं न कहीं इसके चलते ही इसी मानसिकता और ये जो हम लोगों की परवरिश है, इसी के चलते हमारी जो आर्थिक मंदी की तरफ बढ़ने जो संभावना है, वो कई हद तक कम हो गई।
Okay. Now one last question. How has the Russian-Ukraine war increased the chances of economic recession as wheat and natural gas supply has been distributed and or nearly stopped?
Uh, can you repeat the last part?
Uh, actually, natural gas supply has been distributed or nearly stopped.
All right. So, Russia is a major supplier of energy resources like fuel to the Europe, and due to that, due to the disruptions in uh, the chain, I mean not the chain actually, but the channel, it has led to a price hike in most of the sectors because uh, our economy is basically dependent on various factors from which crude oil and energy resources are they share a very large part. Obviously, since the fuel and energy resources have been cut off from the Europe, the world is now seeing a price hike, and we are slowly progressing towards economic recession, and many countries are already in one, like the US and UK.
Okay, Aditya. Like we have time restrictions as well, तो मैं सारे questions तो नहीं ले सकती. And last question from my side. What was your experience with GSTS?
It was pretty fun. I really enjoyed myself, and it was really great working on a topic of my own choice rather than getting any topic from it wasn't like at school or at college we generally get a topic from the professors or teachers and we have to prepare a report on that. That is very hectic. But here at GSTS, I got to choose my own topic for my talk, and it was a really great experience. So, yeah.